Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar from VentureForge, where we're looking at Amazon Seller, how to elevate your Amazon success. As a quick introduction, I'm Andy Banks, CEO of VentureForge. From looking at the list of registrants, you've probably all heard that 5 or 6 times over, so thank you for joining us again. VentureForge are a commercial partner for brands that sell on Amazon, and we work with brands to help them drive not only the top line growth, but to help them understand and drive the most profit down to the bottom line across every single touch point of Amazon. That's it for the sales pitch from VentureForge. That's all we've got today. Today's all about us trying to give you, the audience, some real value from our panel of experts that we've got. The only final plug I have is, and I can't not do this today, it's the final day for entries for the Marketplace Awards. So if there's anybody watching who's not yet entered, feel free to visit the marketplaceawards.com, where you can put yourself into one of many categories, put yourself against the best in Amazon in the UK, and see how you fare versus the competition. We have got one of the previous winners on the call today as well. I'm sure we'll get around to introducing people in a second. As a quick reminder, and as an intro for those that haven't joined us before, today's webinar is a Q&A session. It's not about us trying to tell you anything. It's fortunately or unfortunately for the 3 ladies that have joined us, it's about me asking them questions and tapping into their knowledge, so you, the audience, can learn from people that are at the coalface and running their own Amazon business, or working in agencies running various brands on behalf of their clients. So today's a Q&A format. I'll be chatting to the audience. I've got a few questions, but please bring your own questions in as well. We have a questions icon in the bottom right-hand corner. Please get asking those as we go, and we'll come to those at the end and take the questions that have got the most upvote and that have got the most interest. Not what we do. Let me move on from talking at you to introducing some of our guests. I'm going to start top right, if that's okay. Denny, would you mind just saying hello and tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. I'm Denny Petrova, and I have been working with brands supporting their growth on Amazon for the last 5 years. From great new emerging names to big household brands, being an incredible journey so far. I'm currently on maternity leave, enjoying some time with my baby boy, but outside of my maternity, I'm very happy to be part of the Mindshare worldwide team and to be their Amazon strategy lead for Europe. So very excited to be here, and thank you again for the invite, Andy.
Great, thanks, and thank you for taking time out of maternity leave to come and join us. I appreciate there's a lot of juggling to do when you've got family, especially young family start. I'm going to come bottom right, if you don't mind, Shelley. Just a quick introduction to yourself.
Sure, I am Shelley Morton, based in Belfast. We are a family business, and we own 2 brands, He, She Tan and Skinition Skincare. And I took over the business in 2020, so second generation. He, She is 20 years this year. We're celebrating 20 years, and Skinition is 12 years, but very different strategies for different channels of the business. So yeah, looking forward to sharing that with you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Shelley. Thank you for joining us, and congratulations on 20 years. It's certainly no easy feat to get a business running at all, let alone keep it going for 20 years. So well done.
Thank you.
Cool. And coming bottom left, over to you, Becca.
Hi, I'm Becca. So I am an account director for VentureForge. I've been with the business for 3 years. 3 years, Andy. And I've been working in the Amazon space for 8 years. I currently oversee all of our seller clients at VentureForge. So I'm in charge of a team of senior account managers and all of their Amazon strategies for seller.
Fantastic. Thank you, Becca. I think for me, really great to have an all-female audience. I think one thing I'm really excited about with our sector is, coming from a tech sector traditionally, I've always been in male-dominated spaces, working in a business that is 50-50 male. We're about that, aren't we? We are pretty much 50-50 now. But to be joined on an all-female webinar, and even just to hear your stories, Denny, you've got about an hour and a half before the children come back home. It's great just for you all to give us that time and then to join us. So thank you very much, and really looking forward to where the conversation goes today. I think, Shelley, if you don't mind, I want to come to you in a second. I want to pop a quick poll to the audience first, but I'd like to come to you first, just to chat about your background. But before we do, we've got a couple of polls we want to ask the audience today. The first one that I'd like to ask, just to maybe get a bit of audience engagement and understand where people's focus is what is your primary goal as an Amazon seller? So for those that are listening, we've got about 51 people on, 52. What is your primary goal as an Amazon seller? It'd be great to understand why you're doing Amazon and what you're trying to achieve. And you often get some quite interesting responses back on these. I think the last couple of webinars, we've been asking people, how are you on with developing your Amazon strategy? And in kind of February, March time, you expect that to be pretty much done. And we've got a lot of people still developing. This one's coming through a little bit more as expected. You've got 66% of people today looking at increasing the sales. I think that is probably the most common message that we all hear. Less people looking at enhancing brand awareness, but still a key channel, key reason for it. A lot less looking at whether they're using it to expand their sales channels. So it feels like it's purely a revenue driver for the vast majority of people. And as we're speaking, that's kind of ramping up and up. But the one that intrigues me the most is somebody said something else. And as we racked our brain to work out what options to put in here, I'm now curious as to what that something else would be. So maybe we'll dig that person out afterwards and find out why. But as I said, Shelley, I'd probably come to you first, but that's selfish because I already know a fair bit about your business as you're a client of ours. But with today being focused all on Amazon Seller, I know that you've kind of been on that journey from vendor to seller. So can I maybe ask, by starting with you, why seller? Why did you go down that route, having historically been vendor probably 3 to 4 years ago?
Yeah, it's actually longer, 2018, Andy.
Oh, geez.
I know. So in 2018, we were fully a vendor customer, and our challenge with that was that it had driven down, or Amazon had driven down our RRP. So something that was supposed to sell at £20 was now selling at £10, £11. Obviously, they need a chunk of money out of that, the margin out of that. And really it came down to us as a business looking at a proper online, so not just Amazon, a full online strategy. And obviously, Andy, you were part of those discussions at the time and instrumental in those. And I mean, I guess we had one person in-house who knew a bit about Amazon, and it was great whenever you actually got that big order from a wholesale perspective, you're shipping out a pallet, great. But they just drove the price down and down and down. And then obviously we looked at that, not knowing that much about Amazon, looked at the differences. We did the profitability analysis with you. And I guess we went on that journey of literally going cold turkey on vendor, if you recall, which was pretty frightening. And it did take a bit of time to wash through, but we moved over to seller, where we could control those listings. We could control and increase those prices gradually. And it just meant that it wasn't having a detrimental effect with our other channels. So all eyes were on Amazon from a retail perspective, from a salon perspective. And that was really challenging because obviously we're not in control of that pricing at that stage. So that was really our driver for changing that, but also profit. As you know, I talk about profit. Every time I meet you guys, it has to be profitable. And at that stage it wasn't. So we were doing it for the sake of doing it, basically.
That's quite interesting. The one word that you've said quite frequently now is control. I think that's one of the things that we hear a lot when we're talking to brands about the vendor-seller model. But I think to add a bit more context to your business, you're not just kind of a couple of channels. You had retail, you had pharmacy, you had professional salon that typically, I remember, they wanted to honour the higher price point because they were a more premium experience. And you've got Amazon at the time challenging all of that down. And on vendor, you can control price, but only by renegotiating terms with Amazon and driving that back up. And that's an annual exercise and a tough exercise to go on. So it's interesting that for you, it was about the control of the channel, in probably the broadest sense, control of Amazon in your channel mix, control of price, control of content, control of turnover, and control of profit to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Interesting to hear that come through, because everybody talks about growth, but the control aspect is pretty much as, if not more important, before you can start to drive the growth on. We've also talked there, Shelley, about kind of the role of Amazon to some extent in your wider sales strategy. Obviously, you've got multiple channels. Open this up for everybody to come in on and by all means throw your thoughts in. But what role do you typically see Amazon and seller in particular having in a business's e-commerce or omni-channel strategy?
Yeah, so for us, Amazon is a great shop window. You take the reviews on Amazon and people trust these reviews. So it's almost the first port of call whenever somebody is looking at a new brand is to go and look, are you on Amazon? And for us, it's not about that lower price point any longer. That's where customers are. So my philosophy is we need to be where a customer is shopping. And Amazon is obviously the biggest marketplace and the traffic is already there. We do run, so very, very different for the two brands that we have. She is much more of a retail product in pharmacy and grocery, a little bit in salon, and Amazon would be, a bigger channel for us on she than it would be for our own direct to consumer website, because that's where the customers are shopping, basically. So that's a very important distinction from Skinnation, which is a professional brand that we do have on Amazon, but we do have it at full price on Amazon. So we just run that as a full price strategy. But again, the reviews there are really important for us, and we obviously invested heavily in Vine reviews. So we do have a good customer base then from a D2C perspective on Skinnation, and that's what we're really driving there. But for me, it's not a case of seeing everything separate. They don't affect, I don't think they affect each other as much as what they used to, but that's because for us, certainly pricing is under control, and we only ever get kickback on Amazon if that pricing is an issue. It's a great shop window, great opportunity for content, great opportunity for reviews, and people trust. But where are the shoppers? They're on Amazon.
Yeah, it's a great shout. I remember back in our very early days of conversation with you, you very much were an Irish brand. The brand exposure, brand awareness sits in Ireland, but actually now for you to be able to tap into that GB customer. And I remember looking probably a couple of years back with Becca and seeing where you are now seeing new customer orders coming from. That balance had really shifted. It was lovely to see how you've used that as a way of getting the brand into new territories where historically, or maybe the brand awareness was there, but the perception was it was an Irish brand. And actually, there's a lot more to be had from Amazon than just selling. It's expanding the brand awareness into those other channels.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what's really interesting about Shelley's business as well, when we went into launching Seller, we were really aware of what was the best sellers of the brand, who are the best customers, what are they shopping for? And when we start to look at the comparisons between Amazon data and own site data, when we can actually leverage the two to be able to see that we have a bestseller on Amazon that isn't necessarily on D2C or vice versa. And then with Shelley, what we've also been able to do is use some of her external traffic to drive traffic to Amazon. So we're able to actually understand what's happening within her world and how can we drive traffic towards Amazon, and vice versa. What can we learn from the Amazon consumer that we can implement into Shelley's own D2C strategy? We do that with a lot of our clients, obviously trying to drive more traffic to Amazon. As Shelley says, we've already got a pool of customers there, but it's always nice to be able to implement Amazon into a much wider strategy so that we're able to manipulate and learn and test. It's a really great place to test and learn, especially if you're not aware of who your customer is, or you think you've got a really set customer profile. Amazon can really throw that out for you and start to offer some different insights, which I think is one of the greatest tools from an Amazon point of view.
I think I'm not going to steal your thunder yet, Becca, because I know the report you shared with me was only in draft and we can't talk about the client. Becca's just been doing a very, very deep bit of analysis for a major brand, a brand that almost everybody has touched and felt at some point in their life. And she's done a piece of review sentiment analysis, and because of the scale of this brand and the volume of sales it has well, globally, but the analysis looked at the UK, Becca's been able to pull out of that, why does somebody buy that product? Now, the power of that, when I read that last night, Becca, it's like, wow, how impactful could this be, and how they present that product in every single other channel. You've got mass consumer reviews in the thousands on product ranges, and the sentiment that can be pulled out from that doesn't just feed into Amazon. So to your point on testing and learning, if I was the brand receiving that and your data massively says this is a gift-based purchase, it's not, I'll be careful what I say, it's not a toy, it's a gift, that's how it's perceived. The way you then promote and market that product could now be radically different off that insight. And there's no other channel in the world I know of where you can get hold of that customer sentiment at scale and learn from that and change. So for me, the role of Amazon and e-commerce strategy, it's sales, it's profit. That's probably the most common conversation I think we hear as an agency. It's channel expansion, it's control, it's test and learn, it's understanding what new products you can develop and bring to market where there's already an audience. How can you take market share off somebody? In your world, Shelley, you're now finding out, well, I can take share off brand X, but I'm really struggling to take share off brand Y. And how does that inform conversation? So for me, I think Amazon's got a much bigger role to play than just a sales channel. It's so much more strategic for brands.
Absolutely. And I mean, we still have that, the report this year when we did our annual review. I mean, the bestsellers are completely different on our D2C channel than they are on Amazon, but they change all the time too. And it's always, but Amazon might take that SKU and that space, but actually it's never the same. It's never the same.
And it's really interesting that the bestsellers are so different, because this is what brands ultimately want, right? To not have a competition between your G2C and your Amazon. But again, going back to why Amazon sellers specifically, you mentioned control so many times, and test and learn as well. And I think Amazon seller, as you said, is like such a quick way to test new product combinations and bundles and new product compositions, and like just to understand what, like from profitability point of view, but also diversifying your portfolio, because we are talking about potentially moving from vendor to seller, or just launching on seller on its own. But there's so many brands that actually adopt the hybrid model, and it works successfully for them as long as they manage to diversify the portfolio and have a different offering through seller and different offering through vendor, so they can maximize that opportunity without putting too much strain on their operations. So Amazon seller could have a really, really big part to play in strategy for any business, regardless if it's their only route to market or as part of a hybrid model of dealing with Amazon.
I love the fact you just dropped the term hybrid model into there, Denny. I'm going to hold that thought and come back to hybrid in a second, because I think I can already see questions coming in down that route. And from anybody who's been on our previous webinars, that's a great conversation to get Becca on, because she just gets on a soapbox and has a lot to say about it. So we'll definitely go there later. We've talked a fair bit around best sellers and product mix. What are the key considerations for sellers when thinking about what product range or mix or assortment to take to Amazon? What kind of things should a seller be thinking about?
So I think it comes down to the strategy that you're going with. I think if you want Amazon to be a full sales channel, fully profitable channel, you want to be looking at the entire cost behind actually listing on Amazon and understanding the fee stack behind seller. What I'd be imploring people to look at is reviewing your categories, understanding the amount of competitors you've got in there. Can you be price comparative? We see a lot of people who are very aware that their brand is far superior, but similarly to where Shelley is at her point, doesn't matter if the rest of the market is £20 cheaper than you, because you're still not going to necessarily be able to maintain your full price. I think for me, it's understanding if you've got a quality product that can be competitive within the category and that you're not going to be competing in and just almost in a race to the bottom, I think then you can start to look at it from a much wider point of view and looking at things like profit and how does it stack up, and then you can start to look slightly wider at things like, can you run certain products at a loss so that you can drive your whole brand awareness and halo around? Something that we really like to talk to our clients about is, if your whole account is profitable, brilliant. If you've got one line that's driving a lot of brand awareness, increasing sales for everything else, that actually could be a stronger strategy than just running everything at full price to make a margin.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And I think it gets back to the digital shelf and like the digital shelf and the physical shelf and how things have changed in the last years. And people will previously just go to the shop and they will see everything in front of them. And now things are different. People shop a lot more online. So if you keep your lower price point products away from e-commerce, you might never get discovered. And sometimes I think it's worth running them at a loss, as you said, just because you still want to keep your brand awareness. You want people to see your brand, their products, and the products that they actually shop and have in their cupboards all the time.
Good shout, Denny. So I had a train of thought and completely just randomly disappeared with me, so I'm going to try and regroup myself. So yeah, love the fact you Becca, you touched a little bit on almost understanding why you're putting the product on there and getting to the bottom. For me, it almost starts with, why are you doing Amazon? And then that can drive that product assortment. I think you went down that, is there a loss leader route to go down? Is it all about profit? Shelley, what have your considerations been around that? To know historically you've had 3 brands, you've got 2 brands now that have got very, very different roles in the market. What's your view on which products within the range go to market and should succeed?
Yeah, so again, both brands very different. For Skin it is that shop window. Obviously, Becca mentioned their quality product. If you don't have a quality product that can get 4 to 5 star reviews, forget about those products, because there's no longevity in that and it just costs a fortune. The other major consideration for me would be stock. So we have been there where we've been out of stock of bestsellers, and just how that affects sales and performance and ranking and absolutely everything. So if you have a product that you always have in stock, that is what you need to make this work on Seller.
I think just to build on something that you picked out there, Shelley, longevity, that is something that is so crucial for Amazon success. We've worked with a lot of brands at Venture Forge where they have a high turnover rate in terms of stock, so it's very seasonal. They'll bring in new product in January and it'll be gone by September, and you just can't get the momentum with that. So understanding that you need these evergreen lines to be able to maintain an Amazon business, I think that's key for any Amazon seller to understand, is that you have to be able to pinpoint lines that are going to be available all year round, all the time, that you can build momentum on.
That's a really great point, actually, because gift sets, like we struggle with gift sets on Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, one, people are buying those for themselves. It's not typically a product that you would gift, but we have a hit of 3 weeks, and then we doesn't matter what price point, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's not that short-term approach.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you live and breathe this world all day long, we can spot warning signs if a new prospect comes in and says, I'm interested in selling this kind of product. You've sometimes got to work a little bit harder up here to work back. Why is that? Does that instinctively feel wrong? And one of the things that always feels wrong to us is when somebody says, Amazon, that's going to be a great channel for clearance for my brand and get rid of the short-term stuff. No, absolutely not. If you're going to invest in listings and building a business and building sales velocity for your advertising investment, you need that longevity and continuation of supply. And it's a really good shout on the stock side of things, because I expected this to be a product-based conversation. But we always say internally, 1 week out of stock on Amazon costs you 4 to 6 weeks of sales. The moment you lose that velocity because you're out of stock, the rankings dip. The investment of then trying to build that back up becomes very, very costly to get back to where you were. So it's stock management exceptionally challenging. Any tips on how to manage that? I think it's very easy to think it stops at the warehouse, but I know in your business, Shelley, you're not a monstrous organisation with 50 million quid of stock sat on the back burner. You're working very, very close with your supply base to make sure you've got that continued journey from what's selling at the top to what do we need to be manufacturing at the bottom without putting a bucket load of working capital stuck on shelves in a warehouse. So how important is that supplier relationship, and how, so specifically, how important is that to the Amazon business?
Yeah, it's really important. We do have a great relationship with our manufacturer. Obviously, we build in buffer after COVID and regulation changes and everything. You just learn. So that supplier relationship is key. Now we do ship everything from Belfast here into FBA, and it's also really important to keep a bit of a buffer there. Obviously, we're quite seasonal, so we up that. And I mean, it's a weekly process that we have nailed, and it was probably the biggest hurdle and challenge to get your head around from the very start. But Risa now provides us with a weekly stock update, how many days, roughly how many days we have remaining in stock. And for those best-selling lines, I look at it and think, oh, we're heavy. But actually, no, we're not, because, at different times throughout the year, it takes more time to get into Amazon. Like sometimes leaving from here could be 3 days. Other times it could be 2 weeks, and there's no rhyme or reason into it other than it's just sitting, waiting to be checked in. So there is investment from that perspective of having stock there, but that's really important. And of course, not on every, like some SKUs, we might only have 10 sitting in Amazon. Others, there's hundreds. So it really just depends.
Yeah, I feel the pain on that. I think most people are aware that I've got a very small skincare brand on the side. We've just pulled our stock count this morning. When we look at how much cash is sat on the shelf going nowhere, and that's in our B2B warehouse, not the Amazon warehouse. If you get that wrong on either side of that conversation, if you get the stock holding too low, it's missed opportunity. If you get the stock holding too high, I've sat there this morning and looked at the numbers and gone, oh, that cash could be better spent somewhere else and driving demand. But you've now got to liquidate that cash to, I don't mean liquidate as in shut down, but you've got to liquidate it to be able to invest it elsewhere. So there is that tipping point. I think over the last few years, seller business in particular, I think everybody's been through supply chain challenges. But through the world where demand through COVID went through the roof, Amazon desire to hold stock went through the floor, the ability to put stock into there whilst also managing your supply chain challenge, it's been a tough old journey. It's interesting to hear that you're probably, I sense something like that answer, Shelley, that you're a bit more comfortable holding a little bit more stock there now. It's better to have it and be able to sell it than to not have it, providing you're not too baggy in terms of the stock holding.
Yeah, I think so. We do use Amazon as a channel for clearance, but not unprofitable clearance, because you still have to run ads behind that, so those kind of conversations are there as well. But yeah, it's a fine balancing act really with any manufacturer, and it's just planning and learning, test and learn. Like sometimes you make mistakes, sometimes you don't, but and with it being seasonal as well, that is a challenge for us.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. So moving on, you talked a little bit there, Shelley, about your FBA. So I want to move the conversation on a little bit, talk about fulfillment methods. Interesting, we've talked a lot about the back-end businessy stuff for Amazon here and not got into the typical stuff yet about how do you fulfill, how do you grow, how do you drive demand, but we'll move on to that whole area. But in terms of fulfillment methods, how important is that choice of FBA versus FBM versus SFP versus whatever new option Amazon are launching this week? How critical is that to building and growing a profitable seller business?
So I think if you think about what the key USP is for Amazon, all Amazon customers expect next day delivery. Otherwise, what are they paying there? I think it's £80 a year now for. So I think it's a really interesting thing to look at. If you're transitioning from vendor to seller, that's a really big transition to start thinking about. You've gone from Amazon offering next day delivery. If you then go from next day delivery down to merchant fulfilled, for example, and it takes 2 or 3 days, you're already giving the customer a different customer journey to what they would have had, which actually can be quite detrimental to the brand. I think you almost need to understand, what is the customer expecting of you? What is everyone else in the category doing? So if everyone else is doing FBM and you can make FBA stack up, FBM is fulfilled by merchant, FBA is fulfilled by Amazon. If you can make fulfilled by Amazon stack up where nobody else in your category can, you've already got a lever there that you can pull to grow. But on the counter side of that, if everybody else is doing FBA and you're not, I would be asking the question of whether or not you have validity to sell product in that category.
Great point.
Size of product is very important. Like how big is it? How much like storage fees and like when you calculate everything, because the decision needs to be made based on commercials as well. And I think, you're right. Like the competition needs to be analyzed well, but also it's probably good to mention to our audience that there's more and more fees constantly being introduced. So what we knew like 5 months ago is very different now, and it's going to be very different in 3 months. So people should always stay on top of that. Like there's more fees now introduced for Sell, Fulfill Prime, which will make it a little bit more expensive. And also with like low inventory fees and bulk placement fees that are still away from Europe, but it might come in a few months. Like just always staying on top of that and calculating and choosing your method based on what makes sense for you commercially.
Yeah, I think the key word there, Denny, is commercially. I think there's ways to look at the demands generated. Like my category dictates that I need to be on Prime. However you create Prime, whether it's FBA or SFP, but does it actually make sense? Does it commercially drive the top line? And if it does drive the top line, does enough then drop through to the bottom line to make it happen? What also the changes coming through from the European Commission as well, where that kind of requirement to have FBA to win the buy box is now changing. Has anybody on the call got an opinion on how that will change things?
I think because the way algorithm works is like the delivery promise is a very important thing. So FBA might not be the factor, like being fulfilled by Amazon, but how long the delivery promises will probably still be the factor. So Prime badge may be secondary, but how long would it take to ship it and get it to the customer will still be, because we still need to think about Amazon being so much customer centric. Like, yes, they do have some restriction being placed on them, so they need to change things, but that wouldn't necessarily change the way they want to serve customers and still deliver that incredible, experience for them.
Yeah, I also think the cost of postage has a lot to do with that as well. Amazon consumers are used to not having to pay postage if they're not having the Prime box, but then having to pay $2.99. it's another blocker to stop someone from converting. So what I would be suggesting is that if you're not going to run FBA, you would be looking at a free delivery service. But what we're seeing across quite a lot of our clients, especially as we're coming up, especially as we're in spring deals, Amazon aren't even being able to fulfill the next day delivery promise at the minute. So they're offering 2, 3, 4 day deliveries on some items. So I think that there's obviously some challenge there around what's happening within the FBA fulfillment centres. If you can beat that delivery promise, as Denny says, with Seller Prime instead, that could be a much stronger proposition for you to go into market with.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to go very quickly off piece here, Becca. We've got a question. I think it's specifically for you. Have you fed your kitten this morning?
Can you hear her? I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I'm so, whoever noticed that, thank you. She's just letting me know she's here. Sorry.
Welcome to dial in. We're expecting children jumping into this call from Denny's side. You're getting your kitten, which is great. But no, that is a genuine question. Genuine question from the audience.
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, so we've got fulfillment sorted out. You've considered which route to go down. You've got your portfolio of products sorted out. What are the next most important things to start to drive demand and growth through a seller business?
I think.
Go on, Denny.
Should I? Okay, I'll go first then. I say it's like Amazon. When you decide to go on Amazon as a brand, there's a few things. Like after we have like logistics and operations sorted, and you're confident with that, and you know that you've made the right decisions, it's understanding. And this is something I will repeat from what Becca said earlier. It's understanding how your customers or the customers you want to reach, how they shop, how they search for your product, what your competitors do, and what are the steps you need to take to make that a success. So if you're launching a new brand and there is no demand for your brand there, you need to think about how you can build that and how you can support that with external traffic or everything like using your marketing mix in a very, very good way to support Amazon as a profitable channel for yourself. If there is demand there for product like yours, not so much for a specific brand, then you need to look at how much it will cost me to get to that top of search and what will that look like for me long term. How quickly can I build my traffic so I can start becoming a bit more profitable and not spend all my money. And it's what's really important is like advertising is becoming more and more expensive every day, and there's new products, new advertising products, and also new growth levers introduced to us, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every brand should jump on every single one of them, because some of them make sense and some really don't make sense. So consider your objective. How do you want to drive each one of your products? I really like to advise my clients to really split their portfolio into different maturity stages and understand how each one of these stages in each one of these buckets should be supported differently, and where you should invest in promotions, because that doesn't make sense always either. So I think understanding what's the maturity stage of your brand, your portfolio, how you want to support these different groups of products, and then taking it from there.
Right. Thanks, Denny. Over to you, Becca. Sounds like you're ready to go at the same time.
Yeah, I think Denny's covered quite a lot of it, if I'm totally honest. But I think, think about Amazon and the digital shelf of Amazon. So look and feel is definitely one of the big things for me. How do you differentiate from that competition? What are you doing to grow that brand and increase that brand halo? Understanding, what are your reviews stacking up like? What is the brand looking like? And how are you sitting from a fulfillment point of view? And I think that's how you really start to thrive, is thinking about it as much more than I just need to sell this. Amazon's becoming a lot more focused on brands. You can follow your favorite storefronts now. You're starting to get more news from clients. They've just released in the UK brand tailored promotions, so we can start to target different types of customer. So Amazon are really starting to lead into this owning your own brand destiny, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I personally love vendor then. Cut that one out. That's personally why I love Seller, is because you're in control of your destiny a lot more than you are through the vendor model.
Yeah. Good stuff, Becca. Thank you. I think one of the things that we hear a lot from clients is list and hope strategies. So lots of we met with a business this week who've built a very successful. It is a vendor business. But their approach has been, I put my products on there, we've got a great catalogue, we put it on, it's selling. But what they then often hit is a ceiling very, very quickly, because they've missed all of that retail readiness, understanding the market, how should they be selling, how should they position the brand, how good should the listings be, how do they get that initial review generation, and all the things I think we talk about in the industry as retail readiness, all the foundational parts. that is so fundamentally important. That's for me not a lever for growth. It's a foundational thing that you have to get right. The good representation of your brand and product on Amazon is no longer a nice to have. It's an absolute essential. It's got to be there right from the outset.
Yeah, it is very visual, and we've done a lot of work on listings and search and what's working, what other brands are doing, etc. That storefront, as Becca has mentioned. The other thing, I mean, you have to advertise.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work by putting that on there. It will not work. So you have to have a budget to advertise there. And the other thing for me is that the promotional piece, you don't necessarily have to go clean sweep across the brand. You can do that on a product level. So some of the spring deals or X, Y, and Z at the end of each month, or on certain products, it doesn't have to be across the board. So it's just picking and choosing. But that visual piece and that review piece for me is the two game changers for us.
Yeah, it's an all too common. We're still seeing brands that are, I think this came out in the report you shared with me yesterday, Becca, lazy listings. Your brands that have got web content on Amazon because that's what they feel they can do, but missing the need to invest in Amazon properly and make sure that your strategy, your content, your imagery, your brand representation is 100% relevant to the channel that you're operating in. You know, the Amazon consumer, if I maybe take it from your world, Shelley, the Amazon consumer is likely seeing different brands on Amazon than they are seeing on the grocer's shelf and they're seeing in the salon shelf. So actually how you set yourself apart, how you talk about the products, and particularly in your category where there's a high cost of switching. You know, to get me to swap a skincare brand is quite challenging. I've probably used my brand for 10 years and you're asking me to switch. I can't touch it, I can't feel it, I can't put a sample on my skin. That's a big old leap of faith to ask a consumer to take. So you have to really invest in every single touch point to convince them virtually that spending 20, 30, 40 plus pounds on a great skincare product without seeing it is the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
All right, let's chat a little bit about advertising. We talk about they're getting the foundations right. At what point, so a few of you touched on advertising, but at what point do you start to invest? And Shelley, you said it was essential, but Becca, Denny, when's the right time to do that? Do you pull the lever from day one with a new brand, or do you not?
I think our Pams might kill me if I say something wrong here. For me, it's as soon as your products are retail ready. So as soon as we've got some customer experience in there, getting some really strong reviews, making sure that your content stacks up, understanding that you've got the search terms that you've got within your listings are going to marry up with what you're going to be targeting through advertising as well. I think that it has to be, it's really key for any kind of journey. You know, Denny's talked about the maturity level of products. So you'll have products that are in launch, products that are kind of between in launch and heritage, and then your heritage products. You're going to have different stages of advertising across all of them. I think I hope our Pams would agree with me when I would say that advertising needs to be a constant, should always be on, and you should be looking at it on a per product level to understand exactly what levers to pull and where to target. But for me, as soon as you've got, you know, a high review count, anything around like that, Amazon suggests like around the 10-15 mark, and making sure that you're above that 4-star, that's when it's ready to go for me to start competing. And then obviously you've got the other side where if you want to start taking market share, go really aggressive with your advertising and then understand what's happening in the market. We've been really lucky with one of our clients, which we actually won our Amazon Advertising Awards on, where they've let us test and learn. So we've been able to go really heavy with advertising, and then we've pulled back fully in brand search, or we've really only pushed brand search and dropped off everything else. And having that almost separate pot of cash to be able to test and learn to then feed into your long-term Amazon strategy can just be as important as always on and always learning, because you have no idea how much your competitors are spending. You have no idea what strategy they've got. You can kind of make some waves and make some guesses if you can see them popping up all over your listings. But I think I'm not saying from day one, but from sellable day one, I think you need to be thinking about advertising, definitely.
I think, yeah, I mean, that's great from like activation point of view. It's like that all of that needs to be really covered. And like, if I think from like more strategic point of view, I'm going to go back to the positioning of the brand and the product, like just really, really well understanding the positioning, doing the research, looking at the customer behavior, looking even outside of Amazon and understanding how your customers will find you, and then investing, because it's it's not always like invest more, for example, but like just invest it better. And Becca, you mentioned about like tentpole events and like always on advertising. The strategy should also be different during like each stages, during each season should be different, because we've seen some very important and very, very interesting things in the last year, how cost per click has been steadily growing all the time since July last year. So at some point it's becoming quite unmanageable for brands, even for like huge household names. It's becoming difficult and challenging to keep that profit. So study your competitors and their behavior during big tentpole events. For example, during Prime Day, are they all advertising or are they brand protecting? And how should you do the same? And there's so many good tools that you can use to just monitor that changes and trends over the last year, and then you can create your strategy based on what they do and how you can fight back.
Yeah, and I think going back to one of the questions you asked at the beginning, Andy, how does Amazon fit into a multi e-commerce strategy? Well, where we're lucky to have clients who have got their own D2C or using Google advertising, we're able to use that data and learn what's converting and understand how customers are finding you, and then implement that into Amazon, and then do the same on the other side. So anything that's trending on Amazon, we give that data to our consumers, our clients, so that they can then start to use that in other types of marketing. So it's all around this. It's kind of an evolution of, you have to invest to grow, you have to grow to invest, but also think about the wider strategy of how Amazon advertising can play elsewhere. Because I think brands really need to engage. It's like Denny says, CPCs have grown over the last 6 months. Amazon is now probably the most expensive place to advertise on. And I can guarantee that the majority of people on the call are investing tons in own brand, because their competitors, they're just competing on the way to the top of CPC. So you'll invest in a cost per click, your competitor will up you, you'll up them, and it just becomes this stepping stone.
I think that highlights to me, I don't know which client you're referring to with the test budget. The importance of the test budget is for me to always find the next thing, the new thing that can give you some of that lower CPC stroke CPA acquisition stuff, whilst knowing that certain areas of your advertising, particularly as you build a brand, will just become more ferocious, because as you grow, people want to attack your market share. So you've got to try and balance and offset both aspects. It may sound like an expensive errand to go on to have a budget to test with, but what should come out of that should be the golden nuggets that might be your lower CPA channels that balances the overall strategy out.
Yeah. And that's the only way you can evolve further. If you test, otherwise you won't be able to.
Absolutely. I think in a constantly changing market with new brands, new advertising products or enhancements coming through from Amazon pretty much every time you blink, you have to be testing that new stuff. How is there a new competitor that I should be going after? Is there a new category that I should be going after? Is there a new feature or tool set that I should be testing? If you're not testing that, you won't find the wins.
Exactly.
I'm just looking at our clock. We've got about 15 minutes or so left and a good few questions coming in. I was going to jump to probably the final question I wanted to ask each of you. You've all got different experiences on Amazon, some from a brand perspective, some from agency, but what would be the best piece of advice you would give a seller to help ensure success on Amazon in 2024 and beyond? Big question. Nobody looking like they want to jump on it.
I think from my perspective, I think just be agile. So be aware of what's happening around you. Be prepared to test. Be prepared to learn. Understand that not everything will work, and that you can never do so much damage that you can't undo it. So I think for me, it's having that agility to be able to move around, being able to test and learn with products, being able to leverage any insights we get. Brand analytics is a great place for you to start to learn more about your brand. And I think the more in tuned you are to understanding that Amazon isn't just for another website that you can sell on, understand what it can mean in a wider strategy. That would be my key for being an Amazon seller as we can continue into 24.
Fantastic, Becca. Thank you. I'm looking at the other two to see who's smiling most.
I would say from my perspective, my advice will be to remember that Amazon at the moment, but also in the future, is absolutely laser focused on profitability as a company, as you should be as well, and to define what profitability means for you and for your brand, because it will impact us. Like all of the changes that are happening on Amazon, because they focus on profitability, will impact each one of us. It will impact the agencies, it will impact the brands as well in a different way. So understanding what profitability means for you and how do you deliver that. Is it through increasing margin? Is it through simplifying operations? Is it through like just driving sales velocity? Like, what does that mean for you? And communicating that very clearly and very well with your partners, with your agencies, and making sure everyone knows that, everyone's on board and everyone works towards the same goal, because that's the only way that could be achieved. Just be very transparent with your partners and agencies, because everybody needs to be aligned, I would say.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Danny. Let's, Shelley, I'm afraid there's only one more place to go with this.
Yeah, so I have 2 or 3. One, you have to have stock and you have to have processes around stock. Do not go out of stock. that is, it's key to making Amazon work and be profitable. 2, for us, unless you have an internal team that is clued in on Amazon, it is a different beast. And for us, that headache is taken by you guys at Venture Forge, that I have a bi-weekly call and I don't need to think about it until we come to quarterlies, etc., etc. And that has been massive, because if it was any other way, I honestly don't believe that will have worked. We couldn't do it ourselves. We don't have the tools and the technology that costs so much to put in place that you guys have for everybody. On a monthly basis, I get a P&L. That would be incredibly difficult to do without all of those tools. So for me, it is having expertise in Amazon, and also that backup. Obviously, I do beat you guys up sometimes, but it's also very easy to lift the phone and say, look, what is actually going on here, or what do we do, and have that support, because otherwise it could be messy.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you, Becca and Denny as well. So the things I've got there is, 1, the agility and being able to respond quickly, understanding that role of profit and aligning your partners, Denny, and from your side, Shelley, very clear message: do not go out of stock, whatever you do. And make sure you've got the right support around you. In fact, thank you very much for speaking kindly about us. I think the tip I put on the end of that is start with the end in mind, understand why you're doing Amazon and the role it plays in your business. I think all of the tips and advice that have come out of this will naturally hang off the bottom of that. If you think about distribution, how do I distribute, knowing why you're doing it and route to market, that will help you answer that question. So my tip would be start with the end in mind and be clear about why you're doing Amazon. Okay. Right, time to think on our feet, ladies. We have questions coming in from the audience. We've already successfully ticked off the kitten question, so we're okay with that.
In case anyone's wondering, she is fine.
Fantastic. Becky, you're going to love this first. I want to come straight to you with this, if you don't mind. Great question from Reese. Can you have a vendor and a seller account at the same time, and would you recommend this? Becca, do you want to start with maybe a balanced view on the hybrid question?
Yeah, I believe that hybrid strategies are the future of Amazon, where you've had a vendor relationship. I think you can absolutely run them simultaneously. I think back to the points that Denny made earlier, you want to have different product sets across the two, so that you're not doubling up and you're not competing with Amazon. Otherwise, you're just going to end up in a bit of a pickle. I think the selfish version of me would say just get rid of vendor and sell on seller. But in realistic terms, I think if you are sat questioning whether or not seller is the future or if seller's a better model than vendor, I would ask you to think about trying a hybrid strategy. Take some lines and don't take your bottom sellers. Take some lines that actually drive some revenue and put them on seller and see if you can make that work for you. But absolutely, you can run them simultaneously with no issues.
I think for me, it's that start with the end in mind piece and understand the commerciality of your business and what you're trying to achieve. Some lines, if a client comes to us with a £10-ish line, it's highly unlikely to work on seller with the fee stack. May not even work on vendor, depending on the margin requirements. But there are reasons why one model would typically work better than the other. But it's getting into the detail, understand the commerciality of what you're trying to achieve, the impact of each model. Have you got the capability to even run seller and vendor side by side? Vendor's about terms negotiations. It needs different types of ways of working. Neither model for me is right or wrong, unless you wrap it in a frame of what you're trying to achieve and what is working today and what isn't working today. Then you can start to dissect that a little bit. But I think if the crux of your question, Reese, is can you have a vendor and seller account at the same time? Absolutely, yes. More and more brands are moving towards that hybrid model. Would I recommend it? Honest answer, I recommend asking the question. I couldn't say I'd recommend it because I don't know your context, but that's where I'd start.
I think it depends on why you want to have both accounts at the same time. Like, what's your goal? Is it your goal to get the control and compete with Amazon? Because then, as Becca said, you might get in a bit of a pickle. Or is it just to diversify and have more, like to have a backup, to have like a test and learn platform? Like, what is your goal? And then the answer will come to you.
Yeah. Actually, that backup point is really interesting, Denny. We've got a couple of clients we're talking to at the moment that purely have seller for that reason. It gives them strength in that vendor conversation. They are traditionally a vendor business. They might even make more money on seller, but they're not operationally geared up to do that. But if their terms negotiations go wrong, or they need to strong arm Amazon, or Amazon don't place POs, their business doesn't dry up because they have a seller backup in there. So there's 100 reasons why you'd go hybrid. But I'd definitely recommend asking the question. I wouldn't recommend just doing it, but you can do it. Yeah. Okay, let's work our way down the list. Next question coming in from Lily. I already have a strong UK digital presence, but I am looking to use Amazon to expand internationally. Do you have any advice? I suspect we do, Lily. Who wants to take that on first?
I'm happy to. I'm happy to. What I would say is that don't take this decision lightly. Going into Europe is not an easy feat or a simple feat, but as long as you've got the capability and the mindset behind it, I would definitely say it's something to explore. What I would be suggesting is that you look at your category and understand what's happening in the market there. You might find that in certain categories, in certain countries, the product just simply won't work, or they've already got a really strong own country brand. So I think that's something that for a UK brand, assuming that you are a UK brand, we have to be super aware that some countries will align with the brands that are from their own country. So a super wide awareness. What I would also say is that if you've got some insight from your own category, so we work with a lot of toys and games clients who know what toys work in which countries or what licenses work in which countries. If you've got an awareness that there is a taste there for your product, I would start looking at those first. EU is brilliant, and it could be brilliant for a lot of UK businesses as long as you've thought about it properly as you go through it, rather than just hoping that it'll unlock 6 markets and you'll be making millions just from doing it.
And depending on the category, understand the regulations as well, because some markets are much stricter than others, especially when it comes to like baby products, skincare, household products. So understand that as well before you unlock them.
I want to rewind here to a pre-Brexit pan-Euro FBA world where the Amazon message was press 3 buttons and all of a sudden you're selling in 6 markets.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be wonderful if it was that easy? I think the reality is, I feel like a real broken record here, but start at the top. If they're demanding that country for your product, when a lot of clients come to us and go, I want to sell in all 5, or what was the EU 5 territories, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and UK. Well, Germany is by far the biggest of those in what's the remaining EU 4 or left of the original EU 5. Why would you put a load of effort in pushing that product into Netherlands or Poland or one of the smaller markets? It's too easy to hear the Amazon message of point, click, and off you go. When actually you've got to look at, is there demand? How do I get it there? What are my tax implications? What are my compliance implications? I would see Amazon as an international enabler, but you have to think through how do you use that enabler to get into those markets. I would almost encourage any brand to go market by market, not EU first.
Yeah, I agree. And then think about the potential of that market as well, because Poland at the moment is very small, but is the fastest growing now, and it grew over 100% last year. And it's a massive country. It's bigger than Germany, I believe. Hopefully, I'm not wrong. So it will get big if our operations are sorted. So think about the potential as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Denny. Well, let's pick a simple one. I think we're all in the industry very bad at using acronyms. Really straightforward question coming here from Rory. What is the difference between SFP and FBM? Can I also expand this just to talk about FBA as well? Let's just cover those 3 distribution types off.
Yeah, so SFP is seller fulfilled prime. So that is you delivering the same delivery promise as Amazon. So generally you will have a 2 p.m. cutoff and you have to be able to deliver the following day, and that will enable the prime badge for you. You've then got FBA, which is obviously fulfilled by Amazon, which is Amazon being your shipping of your products. So they're your 3PL as it were. And then you've got FBM, which is usually kind of 2 to 3 day delivery, but fulfilled by merchants. So that is coming from your warehouse and shipping by your own courier on whatever service you want to ship by.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Right, let's have a look at what else we've got here. Question from Oliver coming in. So we have a lot of competition with competitors bidding on our own brand name. What is the best sort of strategy to counter this without just constantly upping the CPC bids?
So I think it depends on how bold you want to be. My question back to you would actually be, do you think that you're the reason that they're driving them CPCs up? Because if you're just matching them, you're all driving the CPC up together, rather than it just being 20p for a click. You've gone, well, actually, I'm willing to pay £5 to protect my bid. So they've gone, well, we'll pay £5.10. If you want to be really bold, I would challenge you to actually cut back on branded search for a week, 2 weeks, and see what happens with the CPCs. I think you would maybe see that they would start to drop. It is a really bold move, and it depends on how much your branded search is playing a part of your PPC strategy. So I wouldn't say if you're doing 100%, I wouldn't necessarily do that straight away, but it's definitely something I would think about, is how much are you driving that performance and that inflation.
And think about all the ad types you have available, because if people are searching for your brand, that means that they are looking for that specific brand. So make sure you have the branded spots covered, like the sponsored brand video. It's like a great conversion driver. Just look at your advertising and understand what drives the most conversion, because sometimes it's not sponsored products. And if you're ranking well organically, you can probably, as Becca said, cut back on that a little bit and see what happens.
Yeah, I think for me, this is an age-old problem. Let's take this off Amazon. This was a Google debate 5, 10, 15 years ago. Should I bid on my own brand name? And I was fortunate, stroke unfortunate enough to work in a brand that had a competitor with an almost identical name that got locked into a 5-year-long trademark battle. And we had a CPC on our own brand name that ended up at £9 CPC just on your own brand name. So it's an age-old question, whether it's on Amazon or off. Should I bid on my own brand term? I think you probably want to add some context into this, Oliver. If Shelley comes to us and says, how can I build my brand on Amazon? And she's got a great new tanning product, we're going to go after the brand share of all the other tanning guys, because Shelley's got a great product and we want their market share. We'll only be able to sustain that for so long. We'll either take share and Shelley will back us and say, great, keep spending, it's working, or we'll have a go, it won't work, and we'll back out of that and we'll look at other methods of growing Shelley's brand, for example. So I think I'd be looking at the context of who is bidding against you. Are they there for the long term? Is it a big brand? Have they got deep pockets? Do you just need to, do you need to be wary of them? And as Becca and Denny have suggested, maybe test pulling out of that and see what happens. Equally, is it a small, medium brand that's having a pop and will realise very quickly, if it's not economical for you, as the brand, it will not be economical for them. So this might be how long can you hold on for, but get the context, understand who it is, and I'd certainly think about either holding on or testing your way out of there and see what happens.
We found with one of our clients that when their own branded was getting driven up, we could see who it was based on where they were landing on our product detail page or in our search results, and we just went full aggressive. We just backed them and drove their CPCs up, so they had to back down. We were very lucky with that client that we were running on an unlimited budget, so we could do whatever we wanted in terms of taking market share and brand dominance. But it was quite an interesting stance to see how long they would fight with us on our own branded. And then we were almost forcing them to run out of budget, so they had to pull back and protect their own brand. So just think about how you can leverage the Amazon console in a different way than just going after your own branded terms.
And use data for that decision making as well, because Amazon Search Term Report is probably my favorite report in the world. So you can, the fact that someone is bidding on your branded space and is winning top of search doesn't necessarily mean that they win the clicks and the conversion. So sometimes you will continue winning that. So make sure you monitor that for all of the terms that you really care for.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not like you don't have to fight back. That's why I said, like, it's not about investing more always. It's about investing better and smarter.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Denny. I think looking at the time, we have literally a minute left. I'm conscious that people's diaries start to tick on to the next thing on the hour. So I'd like to just take the opportunity, ladies, to thank you very, very much for your time. I know it's not just been this hour. We've had a little bit of prep time before this. So thank you very much for giving us your time, but also your insights. That's very much appreciated. And a massive thank you to everybody who's joined us today to come and listen to the tips and advice that you guys have had to share. Please keep your eye on our website and on your emails. We're running these webinars now pretty much every 4 weeks, so watch this space for the next one. And if I've got my planning right, what we have coming up, if not on the next one, but the one after, is a full live Q&A session where we have no agenda. Our speakers are coming here literally to face whatever you want to throw at them. So that should be quite an exciting webinar. I'm sensing smiles from you ladies. Please, thank God I'm not involved in that one. But try out for our next event. Final shout out from me. Don't forget those Marketplace Awards. Entries closing at the end of today. Massive thank you to you all, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.